So for today's episode, I'm so excited to be able to have on this next guest. She was a professor at the University of Washington's Professional Actor Training Program, where I got my MFA. I got to study for 3 years and learn from her. She's taught there for over 26 years. Please welcome Judith Shahn.
Thank you, Samantha.
Of course, I'm so excited to have you here. And also, I wanted to make sure to let you guys know you can also find more information about her after this is over if you go to her website at her company, vibrantspeaking.com.
That's right.
Yeah. So I was hoping just, because I'm thinking, I remember a lot of the lessons I learned from you back in the day. I won't say how long ago that was.
I don't even know how long ago it was.
Isn't that wonderful? And of course it just builds, the lessons build. There are certain things that I didn't quite grasp when I was in graduate school that through later application, I'm like, oh, that was what, that was the lesson. Or certain things, they just stick immediately. Some of them are just back in the subconscious and slowly in there. And one of the things that I really remember is, using my voice, letting my voice flow and trying to take away all the extra stuff that I've learned from socialization or just my own stressors and things like that, and just learning my instrument as it is and letting it do its thing.
Yeah. Flow flow is a really good word, because when we don't flow, it's because there's something from outside that's stopping us, right? So there's some little check thing going on that says, uh-oh, better not say that. How should I say that? What's the word? But if we trust the impulse and what we have to say and just let it go, then, I mean, it's a very brave act, isn't it? Because you don't know how it's going to land on somebody else. You just have to take that chance. You say what's true for you, you say what you think, and then you see how it's received.
Yes.
And it comes back, right? Yeah. That's ultimately what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. When you're saying you say what is true for you and then you see how it's received, I'm thinking all of the ways that so many of us, I know for myself too, that I might want to be careful about what I'm saying because I want to make sure it's received in the way that I'm intending. But that's this illusion of control where I could craft it down to the letter, the exact perfect thing that I want. It doesn't mean it's going to be received that way. Not to take away from the importance of intention and the work, but there's still that other part.
And realistically, there are times in life where it's not safe to say what we think.
Mm-hmm.
If we get stopped by an authority, if I really say what I think, I'm going to be in deep trouble. So I better contain it, right? So we have to gauge, where does it matter? Where does it count? Where is the forum where I get to stand up and speak my mind? Or if it's in the theater, then we get this opportunity to speak through a character.
Mm-hmm.
And through a written play, and then we can express ourselves fully within that guise,
Right. Yeah. Exactly, because I do think about that too. What are all the ways in which we've kind of unlearned the thing that our body already knows how to do based off of survival or how we need to be in society? And like you're saying, we don't want to get locked away into prison, or certain times you do kind of need to hold your tongue or choose something that fits the situation better for the outcome that you actually want or what you actually mean, not just to totally go off of impulse. But then when we do need to live in the space where we are free and we do get to just give it, just like let it out, how do we kind of unlock all of those pieces?
Well, that's what the voice training is about. That's what acting training is about. The Linklater voice work specifically is about really connecting with that desire to speak, right? So the premise of the voice work is we don't want to hear your voice, we want to hear you through your voice, right? So then you have to have practice, as you were saying, at undoing those obstacles which are stopping you. And that's mostly the breath, right? It all comes down to breathing. If we're breathing, we can be present. If we're holding our breath in any way, then we've gone out of the present moment. So breathing is easier said than done, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, we get so used to, in this world of breathing in a really shallow way, we get used to it. And we can survive, right? We get enough air to live from one moment to the next. But if you have to stand up on a stage and influence people and persuade people, then you need a bit more energy. You need a bit more commitment to do that. So that takes breath, that takes your whole body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can't just be, your body can't be shrinking away.
Right.
And then your words coming out. It has to be all of you committed to this thing that you want to say.
Right. Yeah. And especially for non-performers, I mean, I know if I'm at the office job, I'm not having that opportunity to use my whole self in my work. I use a selected portion of what is available to me so that I can do my work well and not frighten anybody or myself. I mean, I don't need to be firing on all cylinders all of the time, but just like if you're sitting for 8 hours of the day, you're going to do irreparable damage to your body. Well, if we're not using our voices, if we're not stretching our voices, our breath, our instruments, I wonder what kind of damage are we actually doing to ourselves in life? Like, how limited are we by never stretching?
Yeah, and you think about past worlds or maybe present worlds that I may not even be familiar with that have more of an oral, ORAL, as well as AURAL culture, right? Where storytelling is part of the tradition, where singing together is part of the tradition. So people are used to, or, in my Jewish culture, it was arguing. Arguing was a big part of what you did with people you loved, right? So my parents would have friends over and they would be fiercely arguing with each other. How can you think that? That's ridiculous. And going at it. And then at the end of the night, it'd be like, okay, dear, great to see you next week, right? And that was just part of what you did, was you put yourself out there, you made your case. And I think we do less and less of that now, right? So yes, it takes practice. It takes reinforcement. The body has to feel um, what it is you're about to do
Mm-hmm.
when you go out to express yourself. And when I do a lot of work with lawyers, and lawyers and actors have a lot in common, right? Because I mean, if they're trial lawyers anyway.
Right.
And I try to convince them that you actually have to say your opening aloud,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to stand up and do exactly what you're going to be doing so your body doesn't freak out. Your
Yeah.
body has to kind of go, oh, that's what you want me to do? Oh, okay. And then do it again and again and again, so that when you get there, your body's like, oh, yeah, I know what we're doing. Great. Let's go for
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking of something, but then I got so absorbed into the lawyer story we were talking about. I guess I just think about how, yes, with like stretching and having your body so that you have that process, that rehearsal, that training to know when you need to let it out, that you can, your body knows what to do and it's not foreign. And I think about the times in our lives, or at least in my life, where I feel so free and so full. It's when I've allowed myself to have access to those things. Sometimes I think about, I miss high school me when I was so fearless. And
Yeah.
as it was easier to be fearless because I got to stay at home with my mom and I had like all these level of protection and a huge safety net. And I just wasn't responsible for as much. And now there's more real world consequences I'm aware of. I definitely wasn't behaving recklessly in high school, but I'm just saying like the awareness of those real world consequences and all of the responsibility, it it can have a sort of shrinking effect, I think, on at least me physically, mentally, spiritually, if I'm not taking those moments to say, like, that this is my safe space where now I stretch. This is the space where I get to let it out and get to be totally like have that, like call that Samantha-ness back to me.
Samantha-ness. I love.
Yeah.
And yes, indeed. And isn't it true that when you stand up and speak in front of people, I mean, both you and I are working at, coaching people to stand up and say what they have to say, it is an act of courage. And that's why the fear of public speaking is one of the greatest fears there is, because what are we afraid of? We're afraid of the judgment,
Yeah.
right? We're afraid that the people out there are going to think we're stupid, we're less than, we're, not up to par. And what I am working with people on is, all right, where do you want to put your attention? Because if you put your attention on all that, you'll be paralyzed.
Mm-hmm.
But if you put your attention on, oh, there's a whole group of people out there who came here willingly to be open to hearing what I have to say. And I have an opportunity here to influence them, to persuade them, to bring them to action, to make them laugh, to feel like we're a community for this hour.
Mm-hmm.
So if I focus on that, that's much more interesting than my fear of what they're going to think of me, which I have no control over.
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
know what they're going to think of me. Yeah.
And yeah, so I started doing stand up a couple years back, and one of the things it's gotten to the forefront of my mind that definitely ties into this is I can't worry because I know for a fact I could do the best set in the world. There's always going to be people who don't like my comedy. And then now if I look at the political situation, that there's always going to be people who are going to be racist against me, always going to be people who are sexist against me, always going to be people who see me. I don't even say anything. They immediately hate me. And I wish that I could change that. But I acknowledge that that's just the way that the world is. And so, you know what? I need to stop shrinking myself. I need to have my whole self. I need to speak my truth. I need to go up and do what I need to do and say what I need to do and stop worrying if everybody's going to be on my side. Because guess what? Never going to happen.
Right.
It's never going to happen. So if I'm focusing on that, I'm only hurting myself. And I'm living in this sort of false reality of wishing for things that just aren't. I can get more people on my side. Yeah, I can get more people to appreciate me or care about me, but I'm only going to do that if I have this certain level of vulnerability where I allow them to see me and I allow them to hear me and I don't worry about pleasing them because thinking that I know what they want to hear is also another form of my judgment of putting it onto them too.
And first of all, I want to say, I would love to hear you do stand up.
I'm still like so nervous for people. It's always made me the most nervous for people I know to see me do anything, like any form of performing. But I do have some shows coming up. So
you have to tell me. Because to me, that is the top hardest thing in the world. So I need to see you do that.
It's the most terrifying thing. Yeah, it's still the most terrifying. I get through it and I manage to have some fun. But before every show, they're especially in the very beginning, or if I haven't been going up very recently, like now, of course, with quarantine, these next two shows, I'll be doing a lot of rehearsing by myself.
Right.
And the fear factor I'm going to have is, it's going to be there. I'm going to do it anyway, though.
Right. that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
You feel the fear, which means you care.
Yeah.
It means you're human, and you do it anyway,
Yeah.
right? It's when fear shuts us down and stops us completely, then then we're dead in the water.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to say in response to that is my experience after the many decades I've been alive is that the more I am true to myself and say what I have to say, the more respect I get, the more people are on my side. Now, like you said, it's not, you know, there's always going to be stuff that, well, you can't
Right.
win them all. But people tend to respect, and they know, they can feel when you are speaking your mind
Mm-hmm.
and expressing your feelings, you know, not in a self-indulgent way, but in a human way, you know, that you care. When you care, when people see that you care, it's pretty hard not to care on the receiving end of that. That's what I found. So I try and trust that, but I still feel nervous.
Yeah.
Still feel nervous because I care and I want it to go well and all of that. But, right, you got to show up first.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the thing.
Cool. Okay. So I want to make sure to ask you about a few things before I take up all of our time. um, I really want to hear more about the story of how you kind of specialized as a voice teacher, because I know initially you started out as an actor in New York, right?
Right.
And so I'm just curious, what was the thing that led you to having this passion for voice teaching? And also another thing before I forget is, how did that help inform you as an actor or change some of maybe like your character work and things like that?
Mm, great. Good questions. So I was a young woman in New York trying to make it as an actor. I remember going to auditions, and there would be 50 young women that looked exactly like me. And it was like, oh, mm, damn, this is hard, you know, and as just hard to even get in the room, get seen, get in the door. And I tried and I did all that. And I had an actor boyfriend, and then we split up. And a friend of mine who was out in Seattle offered me a show out here. And I went, Seattle, is that, where is that? Oh, came out here and looked around, and I thought, wow, this is a place where you could actually have a life.
Yeah, it's so gorgeous out here.
And so I began, people began giving me jobs. And one of the first jobs I had was teaching voice to teenagers at Seattle Children's Theater. And I remember saying to them, well, you know, I'm not a voice teacher. And they went, yeah, but you know, you've been trained, you went to school, you're an actor, you know what you're doing. I was like, okay. And then I got hired by Cornish specifically to teach Linklater work. And I just ran into the wall. It's like I knew that I didn't know what I was doing. I just, you know, people would have tight jaws, and I'd be like, can you, I didn't know what to do. So I wrote to Kristin Linklater, and she didn't answer. But then I heard that she was coming to Seattle for a weekend workshop, and I was like, oh my God, I've got to be at this workshop. And, you know, there are those light bulb moments in your life. And that was really one of them for me, because I got in this weekend that it was possible to be on your voice, in other words, fully vibrating and telling the truth at the same time. Because in our world, we tend to get quieter and quieter if we're telling the truth. It's like,
Ah,
I really love you. I love you so much, you know, instead of I love you with all of my heart. Yeah. So being able to experience that, I thought, all right, this is what I'm meant to do. And I went to Kristin after the workshop. I said, how do I train? And she told me to begin, you know, what to do. And I just went on that path. It was like, okay, this is my path. And how it helped me in performing, because I do remember I had to take over a show at Act Theater. They were doing Red Noses by Peter Barnes. And it's about a group of actors who are clowns in the Middle Ages during the Black Death, right? Okay, funny, ironic subject about a very unfunny thing. I mean, speak of the Black Death, we're in our own Black Death right now, right? Um, and I was assistant directing the show, and the lead actress ruptured a disc in her spine
Ooh.
during tech. And they said to me, would you fill in? And I was, you know, I got my book. I was like, okay, sure. And then it became clear that she was not going to be able to recover. And they said, would you do the role? And I had 48 hours to get off book, to sing, to learn the dances. It had all this juggling,
Oh,
you know. So it was the biggest leap of faith I ever made. And having the voice training was my grounding thing, because I thought, all right, my obligation is to be heard,
mm-hmm.
say my words and be heard.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to give the audience that, and I have to give them that on the first show I'm out there. So the irony was, I was able to, you know, to learn the lines, and because I had been rehearsing with the show, but still, it wasn't in my body, you know.
Right.
So when I got out on stage, and I think there were 21 people in the cast, 2 women and 19 men, I really wasn't confident about where I was going on the stage. And so I would hear little voices in my ear like, Judy, over here, get down, Judy, go off right. And I was just like, okay, you know. But it was an amazing experience. And then I ended up doing the whole run of the play. Uh, and it was an amazing play about faith.
Mm-hmm.
So there was something very synchronous about it, about having the voice work, about a play about faith and about my own faith, in just trusting the moment, what I had, and knowing that I could breathe under those circumstances, and nobody was going to die if I
Yeah.
think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay. I mean, I could just, I mean, and I know for myself too, with some of the lessons that I got from your classes, is remembering that breath and holding myself accountable too. If I'm, you know, it's a moment I'm feeling really tense, like, oh wait, Samantha, breathe. Like, you know, this, breathe, just breathe through it. And it just makes everything, it's going to make the experience easier. Just stay present, breathe. So you can think, you get the, you know, so you can choose. Yeah. And I'm wondering, because I know you do teach internationally as well. So before COVID, you were teaching in Brazil and Scotland and Mexico, right? And I'm curious, with some of the ways that people hold or have a tight jaw, those blocks to their voice, their natural voice, have you noticed differences between countries, or is it more differences with like personality types where people may hold or their blocks may be?
It's both. I think there are absolutely cultural, geographic, racial, gender, uh, all those things affect the way people learn to express themselves, right? And in Brazil, it was amazing, because in Brazil, I was teaching in English and I had a translator, and I'd never worked with a translator. So it helped me, okay, I've got to be succinct and clear. And I would say something that I thought was succinct and clear, and the translator would go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. I'd be like, huh, okay, what are they getting? I don't know.
Right.
But physically, they were so free, right? I mean, I would give them a suggestion and they would be off and running around the room and without hesitation. I didn't have to coax them. I didn't have to say, please do it, try it again, more, more, more. Not at all. And yet, when it came to the breath, there was a lot of caution in the abdominal muscles, right? And one can surmise what that's connected to, but I would say, as a rule, Brazilians are way more expressive than most Americans I've ever met. Now it's not true of all Americans.
Right.
Tons of different cultures in the US of A, but a typical, US of A response is to sit on it.
And especially Seattle.
Right, right. It's like I'm not going to let the meter get too charged here, right? I'm going to protect my expression. And and yet there are, of course, everyone has their individual history, and the voice is psychophysical. So everything you've ever been through in your life is in your body and therefore in your voice. And if we want freedom, then we have to be willing to undo the things that have stopped us from having that freedom. And it's scary sometimes. It's like, uh-oh,
Yeah.
you don't know what's going to come out. But I think the rewards are worth it.
Was there anything, because it definitely does seem from the story, like you were definitely guided into this, like into your work, right? By the opportunity that presented itself in Seattle. And I know just like whatever the next sort of step when you were at Cornish, it's like the next step is getting more of that training. But were there any moments that seemed especially hard where, I mean, did you ever have like moments of not necessarily being sure if you wanted to continue in that way, or after the aha moment went off with like, you're going to continue in this work, did it feel pretty smooth sailing in terms of the next step to the next step to the next step?
Well, as time goes on, so the time at the University of Washington, is being in an academic situation, it's always mixed because you're not in a studio where you can do exactly what you want. I mean, there's a structure that is sometimes really hemming you in. And there were times I felt like the voice teacher who didn't have a voice, right, on the faculty.
Oh.
But and I love my colleagues. I mean, really, for the most part, it's just the academic system, right? But in the classroom, I got to do what I wanted to do. I got to try things. I got to grow. When I would go out and do a workshop and get something new, I would bring it right back to the students. I'd say, look what I got. Oh, I got something new. And I'd be so excited about it. And I would try to take each year and say, all right, for me, this year is about, and I'd give myself a theme. And I'd share it with the students. I'd say, this is what I'm interested in exploring. What about you? I mean, you can come along with my theme or you could adapt it to your own theme, but why are you doing this? You have to have a reason to want to do it. And then, as I began to branch out into working with non-performers, which I love. I mean, I have to say, it is a joy for me to watch, and I do a lot of the same work. I get them on the floor, I bounce their bellies,
Yeah.
I get them to take up space, and they are blown away by the profundity of having that opportunity to do it. And I'm so pleased to be a little part of that process for them.
Mhm.
So it's intuitive. Of course, you need this as an actor on the stage, but so many people need this work.
Yes.
I mean, people come to me because they'll say, my wife says she can't hear me, and I'm tired of her saying that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, great, let's explore that. What do you need to be heard by your wife? What do you have to change? What are you willing to change? I'm game. Or someone who's in healthcare and they've got to raise money for the next new cure for something. Oh my God, I feel privileged.
Yeah.
Stand by them and say, look, this, what you're talking about is literally life and death. So you have to get people to hear you. And what's that going to take? How are we going to practice that? What more do you want from this? And when I work with lawyers too, so I teach a class at the University of Washington School of Drama. No, sorry, the University of Washington School of Law in the winter, and it's called Persuasive Oral Communication. You know, fancy name for public speaking. And I say to the lawyers, look, as actors, if we do a bad show, okay, no one,
Right.
it's like, all right, the audience didn't have such a great experience that night. Okay, life will go on. But for you, you've got a verdict for someone that is going to affect not only their lives, but maybe many lives. So yeah, no pressure, but yes,
Yep.
it,
Hmm.
and lawyers who advocate for legislation, and so there's people out there doing hefty stuff, and if I can help them do it better and more fully, I'm all over that.
Yeah. Awesome. I completely agree. I'm very excited about it. And that's, you know, also at the heart of my coaching too. I'm so intrigued with, obsessed with almost of the ways that performance can help people become more of themselves and do their real work. And whether or not they're going to use it to be the best actor that they can be and get their dream TV show, wishing them luck for that, or it's having a better relationship or just feeling more comfortable with themselves at an interview or something, there's a performance tool that can help you. And it's just nice to be in the room with people who are also willing to say, hey, this is me. And you know what? This is more of me. And this is what I'm vulnerable about, but this is the thing that I want. And I'm okay to walk through that vulnerability because it's the only way to get there.
Yeah. And as Brene Brown, the
Yeah.
social scientist would
Hmm.
say, Brene would say, vulnerability is power.
Yes. My, I like the synchronicity here. My first voice, not singing voice, but for theater, speaking voice teacher that I remember having at Northwestern, she, and it's awful because I don't remember her name. I only had her for one quarter, but she did this thing where she had us go into what we imagine to be our most powerful pose on stage. And, at eventually somebody stood in an X, like a giant X. And
Right.
she said, isn't it interesting that your most powerful stage is also your most vulnerable? And that always stayed with me. And
Yeah.
those are always the performances too that move me. It's the human aspect of somebody just being completely real and seeing that they're real and how that just draws you in.
Yes. And I think too, for anyone that has gone through theater training or voice training, anything to do with performance training, even if they don't become a performer, is they've gotten in touch with a kind of courage that it takes to reveal oneself. Because it is courageous to do that. And that is what we do in the theater. You know, we do it in funny costumes with sets and in the context of a story. But when it's at its best, we are telling the truth, right? We are unmasking, we're revealing. And when people join that moment, I mean, I have chills just remembering, you know, what it was like to be in the theater. Samantha, are we going to get to be in the theater again? And I know, it's,
Yes, I'm going to say yes. I don't know when, but I have faith that at some point it will actually happen. It has to. It has to. It's been from the time that humans have existed, so it has to.
yeah, I think you're right. I think we will.
There's no other option. Just like Jurassic Park, we will find a way.
I miss it so much. I miss being in a crowd of people all focused on the same story, laughing, crying, screaming, breathing together. It's it's what we're meant to do. So,
Yes,
we're doing the best we can meanwhile.
we are. I
Yeah,
mean, we have technology now. I mean, I am grateful for that, because if there was this sort of necessary social isolation or social safe distancing, and we didn't have these ways to connect, it would make it even more even more difficult.
and you know, the joy too of some of the teaching I've done on Zoom lately, and it's bizarre to teach voice on Zoom because everyone has to be muted.
Oh,
You're teaching voice to people who are muted, right? Because the sound lag is too weird on Zoom. I mean, you can do one at a time.
right.
Group, you can't. So, uh, one of the cool things is I've had people all over the world in the same workshop, Australia, Europe. You know, it's like, okay, we can all be here
Yeah.
and do something together, and we don't have to take a plane and muck up the environment. I mean, that's a good thing.
And I imagine too, for self-conscious students, it
Right.
would be even more of a wonderful gift for them, because they can try it all out and they're on mute.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's neat with like doing some of the Zoom calls too with some of my coaching students as well, or coaching clients, that yes, it is awkward at first. Of course it is. We're not used to talking like this, but the more you do it, the less awkward it gets. And that's great practice to have, because when you're doing that audition or that callback and you're on Zoom, it's going to feel a lot less weird when you've been calling in to get your coachings that way. Um,
That's right.
yeah.
The other thing, okay, that gives me joy, and I started doing this along the way where I became a kind of song gatherer. And so what I love to do is lead groups of people in singing. Now, this has been particularly challenging in COVID times, but pre-COVID and hopefully post-COVID, you know, and I'm not the best singer in the world. That's not my main training, but it gives me joy to have people sing in rounds and in harmony, and to sing in languages from around the world. So, my goal in a lot of places has been to do an instant chorus. And I mean, when I say instant, I'm talking in 5 minutes, we're singing a whole thing in 4-part harmony. And it's just, oh, it's awesome. So I intend to keep doing that and figure out how to keep doing that. But it turns out right now, singing in public is one of the most dangerous things
Right.
to do. And what are you going to do? Sing with a mask on? I don't think so. So, but I do love that. And I do have a CD that's called Sing Together.
Oh, okay.
People can purchase that from my website. And it's basically, the CD is, I think, what, 18 songs that teach you how to teach other people these songs. So it's a teaching CD. And the idea is to get the world singing. I grew up in a singing family. We used to sing in the car. We used to sing with friends, folk songs. You know, everybody knew the same songs. And I think that's a huge, important way of connecting human beings. And it doesn't have to be good, it
Right.
just has to be full out.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. It doesn't have to be good. Just
Yeah,
have fun and connect.
yeah,
And also, you know, not to have to argue for the arts, but a lot of times, unless if people do it themselves, they don't always acknowledge how much it gives back to society or their lives in the world. And you don't have to be a professional in order for it to give you back something huge that can impact your life in a huge and amazing way and make you even better at whatever you're doing to make your money at. You know, yeah.
totally.
Yeah. So I just want to thank you again for taking your time to be on the podcast. It was just such a gift to have you here. And again, if you're looking for an amazing voice coach, you can find Judith Shahn at her website, vibrantspeaking.com, www.vibrantspeaking.com. And if you'd like to contact me about ways that performance skills can help improve your life in voice, body, and mind, you can always reach me at www.beyondtechniquecoaching@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and share. I really appreciate your help in getting the word out so that we can help improve people's lives through the power of performance. Stay safe, stay healthy, and hope to see you next time.